Okay, so we're going to dive into what is arguably one of the most powerful messages of our time. But to really get it, we actually have to go way back to a story of incredible defiance from the 3rd century, with an ancient Roman saint who completely understood what real treasure was. These are the treasures of the church. Just imagine, 7 words spoken in the face of the most powerful empire on earth. With that one simple sentence, a man sealed his own fate. It's a line that has just echoed through the centuries, and it's filled with this radical kind of courage that we're about to unpack. So the guy who said it? St. Lawrence, a deacon in Rome. The Roman authorities, they'd just executed the Pope and were now demanding all the church's gold and silver. So Lawrence gathered up the poor, the suffering, the people society had forgotten. He presented them to the prefect and delivered that legendary line. That was his treasure. And for that, they killed him. Now let's hit the fast-forward button almost 1,800 years into the future. A brand new pope, Benedict XVI, is on the world stage. And for his very first major teaching, his first encyclical, he doesn't write about complex rules or church law. Nope. He focuses on that exact same radical idea that got St. Lawrence martyred. He called it Deus caritas est, God is love. And the media? They were absolutely stunned. Everyone was expecting this stern, rigid theologian, right? Instead, they got a document that the Times called beautiful and passionate. The Guardian said it shattered his image of coldness, and the New York Times nailed it when they said he was returning to the absolute core of Christianity, love. It was a total shock. But, this brought up a really important question. I mean, in a world filled with so much injustice and suffering, why on earth would you spend your first big statement writing about something as common, maybe even as cliché as love? I mean, seriously, what more is there to say? Well, Benedict's answer starts right here, in his own beloved city of Munich, a place known for its joyful celebrations. Half the population lives completely alone. He saw that the word love is maybe one of the most used and most abused words we have. It's been cheapened, and he thought it was time to reclaim its true revolutionary meaning. So how does he pull this off? Well, he goes back to basics, back to the ancient Greeks, to unpack the 2 fundamental sides of love. He brings out 2 words, eros and agape. First, you've got eros. This is the one we all know. It's human love. It's passionate. It's ascending. It's the love that desires, that seeks, that wants something. It's the raw, powerful, and, sometimes pretty messy engine of human connection. But then there's agape, and this is descending love. It's divine, it's completely self-giving, it's sacrificial. It's the kind of love that doesn't try to get anything, it just gives, without ever asking for something back. It's the love that defines God himself. Now here's where Benedict makes his big, revolutionary move. For a long time, a lot of thinkers saw eros and agape as total opposites. Flawed human love over here, perfect divine love way over there. But Benedict says, no, that's not right. They aren't in conflict. Our messy human love, our eros, is actually the raw material for divine love. It doesn't need to be thrown away. It needs to be purified. And he uses this brilliant metaphor of a crucible to explain it. You start with the raw gold ore. That's our human eros, and it's mixed with all these impurities, like selfishness or jealousy. You put it into the fire of purification. That's things like sacrifice, suffering, turning towards something bigger than yourself. And what comes out? All the impurities are burned away, and you're left with pure gold. A love that is both fully human and fully divine. Agape? This whole idea of being purified through letting go, it isn't some new thing. It's right there at the very heart of Christianity. As Jesus says in the gospel, he who wants to save his life will lose it, and he who loses it will recover it. It's this wild paradox. The only way to get to a greater, truer love, to agape, is by letting go of all the self-centered parts of our eros. It's in the giving that we really get something back. So, what does this all mean for the world out there, beyond just you and me? Well, Benedict argues that this transformed love has huge implications for society. In fact, he makes a really bold claim. Even if we could create a perfectly just society, it would still be fundamentally inhuman without love. So how in the world do we actually practice this higher form of love? Especially with people who are, let's be honest, difficult, or even seem impossible to love.
Benedict introduces this beautiful idea he calls borrowed love. There are moments when our own love just runs dry. We can't do it on our own. And in those moments, he says, we have to turn to God and basically ask to borrow a little spark of his infinite love to keep our own going. This borrowed love is what he calls charity, or caritas, and it's totally different from justice. Justice is about giving what's owed. It's the bare minimum for a functioning society. But it can also be really cold and impersonal. Charity, on the other hand, is personal. It's not about giving what's owed. It's about giving of yourself. It reaches into all the lonely, suffering places that laws and government programs can never, ever touch.
And this leads to his main point, which he just says flat out. Love, caritas, will always be necessary, even in the most just society. His argument is that no matter how perfect we make our political systems, you can never eliminate that uniquely human need for a personal touch, for consolation, for a love that actually sees you as an individual. Okay, but that sounds exhausting, right? Where does all the energy for this tireless, world-changing love come from? Well, this brings us to the last piece of his argument, a sort of divine mathematics, where the normal rules of productivity just get thrown out the window.
And to explain this, Benedict tells this great story about Mother Teresa's nuns. The sisters were just completely swamped by the needs of the poor around them. They were burning out fast. The logical 21st century solution would be pretty obvious, right? Cut back on the non-essential stuff, like prayer, so you have more time to work. But they did the exact opposite. When Mother Teresa suggested they reduce their prayer time, the sisters basically staged a revolt. They didn't just refuse, they demanded more prayer. They literally doubled their time of daily adoration. And here's the crazy result of that divine math. The input was more time spent in prayer, what a lot of people would call wasted time. The output? More vocations, more women joined their order, and they found they had a greater, not a lesser, capacity to serve the poor. For Benedict, the lesson is crystal clear. Real, effective action isn't the alternative to prayer, it's the fruit that grows from it. Which brings us all the way back to where we started, in 3rd century Rome. Because now, with this new understanding, we can see that St. Lawrence's final act wasn't just some clever comeback or a moment of political protest. It was the perfect, living example of everything Benedict just described. Think about it. His very human, passionate love for the poor, his eros for the forgotten people of Rome, had been put through that crucible. It was purified by his faith and his commitment, and it was transformed into a total, self-giving agape, a complete gift of his life for God and for them. He didn't just serve the poor, he saw them as treasure. And so when we hear those words again, these are the treasures of the church, they just land with a totally different weight, don't they? It's not just a smart aleck remark anymore. It's this profound declaration about what happens when human love gets purified, perfected, and unleashed as a divine force in the world. From an ancient Roman deacon to a modern pope, the message is exactly the same. The only real revolution is a revolution of love, which leaves us with a final question to think about, not just for them, but for us. What is the true treasure today?